Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this morning. This is our third episode of Creative Direction. I'm your host this morning. My name is Valerie Thompson. I am the chair of the Mosaic Initiative of the American Advertising Federation Toledo chapter, where our mission is to ensure that diversity is created and celebrated in our local art and advertising communities. Today, we have an amazing opportunity to share with our special guests, Pete Goldlust and Yusuf Lateef. These are two awesome visual artists who are so much more than that, but they have just added to their resume 2 stunning murals at Toledo Hospital. And I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment. Just a few housekeeping items. We'd like everyone to mute themselves. I think everyone is right now. Good job, everyone. It's always that rogue person who's just like, and then they have a million things going on in the background. So thank you all for doing that so we can hear clearly. We will have a question and answer session at the end for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So we ask that if you have a question, please wait until the question and answer portion to ask it. If you would like to place your question in the chat, feel free to do that. We can ask, we just ask that you wait until that portion so that it won't be a distraction during the presentation. We will be sending out a follow-up email after the webinar that includes a link to the recording of this session. And a link to our jamming playlist this morning, which is a combination of some inspirational songs from both Pete and Yusuf. So we'll send that out along with a survey about how you liked this webinar, or what you thought, and details about upcoming events. So please be on the lookout for that after the event. Now onto the good part. So again, we are joined by Pete Goldlust and Yusuf Lateef. I'm gonna start with Pete. Pete, welcome, good morning. How are you doing?
Good, thank you so much, Valerie. It's great to be here.
Good, it's so good to see you again. Could you introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, my name is Pete Goldlust. I'm an artist based out of Eugene, Oregon. I connected with Valerie through a different project and was fortunate enough to lead to doing some murals for ProMedica Toledo Hospital, and it was a fantastic opportunity. I work with my wife, Melanie Drummond. We packed up the whole family and came out for, we were there for about 2 months working on the murals at height of COVID time. So it was an adventure.
Fun. Thank you, Pete. And Yusuf, we'll go to you next.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Yusuf Lateef, and I am an artist and educator here in Toledo, Ohio, and had the great opportunity to meet and work with Peter and Pete and Melanie, and yeah, it was a really awesome experience.
Now, they gave a very, very, very brief explanation of themselves, because you know how artists can be sometimes. So I really encourage each one of you to research both of these artists, even after the talk, to really see the breadth of work that they have done and the impact that they have made in their communities. They are leaders of organizations. They are educators, like they have said. They are organizers. They've made an influence in the art industry, the advertising industry. So they're being modest right now. I'm not gonna go too far into it because some of it actually relates to some of the questions that we're gonna be talking about. So I'll move forward. Now, I'm gonna ask both of you this. Whoever wants to start can go ahead. You started to touch on it a little bit when describing yourself, but tell us a little bit about the beginnings of your career. How did you get started in public art? What is your career background?
Yusuf, you're on.
I'm gonna get you for that, Pete. So I was I was a student here. Well, when I was in high school, I was in the first group when they rolled out the Young Artists at Work program here in Toledo, and I think it's in its 25th year or 26th year now. And so I was in that first cohort of students, and the first project we did was a waterfront mural, traveling mural, and it was really a great experience. And I knew from that point on I was going to have some type of career in the creative arts. So, and I did, and I worked all throughout high school with the Young Artists at Work program, along with other things. And then, but that was my first experience with public art. So that's kind of, for me, got the ball rolling. It was my first job, actually. So it was like a really good launching pad, if for sure.
Doesn't it make it real when you get paid?
It does. It does. It's like, oh wait,
You can draw all day long, but when somebody is like, "Here's a check," you're just like, "Oh, it's real. I'm really a professional."
Especially as a kid, because I remember we had to go through what was it? It was called PIC. What's that called?
I remember that.
We had to get our workers permit because we were underage, because we were coming in at like 14, I think. We had to get work permits and an ID, and it was like a big deal. And we were working outside. So right now they're all, they're spoiled over there at the Center for Visual Arts. But when we started, it was under tents. So you had to, deal with the weather. And amongst other things. But that first check in your hand, we didn't know what to do. we pretty much just spent it on lunch. That's pretty much what happened.
I was like, you won't buy him more paint. I know that.
We were back and forth over the bridge going to McDonald's.
Oh, that's awesome. And a testament to programs for student artists, because that helped to shape the artists that we're looking at today, and introduced you to a professional way of doing things early on, which I think is so important.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Pete, how about you? How'd you get started?
I got started much later, I think, than Yusuf did. I had no idea that you could make a living as an artist. When I went to college, I was looking for an advertising design program, and that's what I ultimately ended up going towards, and then ended up kind of switching as I was there towards fine arts, which is a pretty big shock to me and my family. I ended up doing 7 years of art school between New York State and Chicago. It still would never have known anything about the public art field because it wasn't covered in the slightest in either of those programs. I was very lucky that I had a friend in grad school who had some experience with public art, and we got an opportunity to do some things together, and that really helped me break in, because it's such a hard thing, just kind of getting over that hump where you need someone to give you that first commission and trust you to do something out in public. And which is a major obstacle, I think, in the public art world, is just helping people get over that hump and create those opportunities for people to just break in, because until you have that, those couple things in your portfolio that are actually out there in the world, it's hard to get anybody to touch you. So I do my best to kind of do the same thing. I mean, ever since I've worked with that partner, an artist named Mary Lucking, I really enjoyed the collaborative side of public art, and I've kind of sought that out in a few different ways. Most recently, dragging my wife into the business with me, and then foisting myself on Yusuf for a while. That was nice. So we're hoping to do more together.
That's awesome. And I think, like, I didn't know what a graphic designer was when I graduated high school. I didn't know what a graphic designer was for real when I was in college and switched over and just started doing what I was doing, right?
Yeah.
And this is like, it kind of forces you, destiny kind of forces you into these different paths that are meant for you. But that's interesting what you said, because it's like, you can't get a job. No one will hire you until you have experience. Well, how do you get experience and no one will hire you?
Yeah.
It's that catch-22. So that says so much to me that, wow, we got to be able to really mentor each other, um, notice the interest in the young artist and reach our hand out and say, let me help you figure this out, because you're going to need somebody with some clout or some sort of skin in the game already to kind of help to bring you in if you don't have any experience. So
Yep.
I think that's a component that we don't think about a lot of times. You're such a good artist, you have the skill, but you're not getting any work. Why is that? Something's missing in there. There's a gap in there. And I think that it's established artists reaching back and helping to provide those opportunities. So that's awesome.
Right.
I love that you had two different beginnings, and
Yeah.
yet here we are with you all coming together, and being able to complete this project together. So that's a great segue into our next question. So Pete, I'm going to start with you this time. Let's talk about the Toledo Hospital mural design. How did you choose what to create? And I'm going to share my screen just a second so everyone can see what the design looks like.
So this was a really fast turnaround project, and the largest mural that we've worked on. So this we started. We were asked by Valerie to submit a proposal. I think it was August of last year, and the goal was to have it up by January. And so this is the main, a main entry corridor from the parking lot into the hospital. And then there's the larger part of this is a nine-story staircase, which Yusuf was largely responsible for over those 2 months. So what we did as far as the imagery, we wanted to focus on healing and helping, and to acknowledge all the whole impetus that really came from Valerie was to acknowledge the amazing work that's being done by the staff right now during the pandemic, and how hard everybody's working and how much they're sacrificing and putting in, and really create something positive there, to acknowledge all their work. And that was really the whole reason for the project. We worked with a bunch of quotes that came from the staff and from patients talking about their experience at the hospital, just thanking people in various ways. So we included that text, and that's kind of what we worked around. My work obviously is very kind of cartoon based, and it was tricky coming up with the imagery because we were focusing on this healthcare facility, and really the stuff of healthcare, the machines and the wheelchairs and all those things don't really come off as super positive symbols. You really want to focus on these kind of metaphors for people helping other people, and just positive exchange and sense of community. And once we kind of moved on from the literal objects of the hospital and of healthcare, that's where the design kind of flowed from. And fortunately, I think, and probably Valerie knew this by the time she kind of plucked me for this project, but these kind of somewhat abstract illustrative cartoons that we do are kind of there's an abstract quality to them, and an ambiguity and a sense of interpretation about them, so they kind of lend themselves to that kind of metaphor.
I love it too, because wait till you guys see this in person. It's something that you really, it reflects back to you who you are and what you see. That's what I like about it. I am able to see the bits of healthcare that are kind of healthcare specific, but then it's intertwined with, like you said, these kind of fantasy characters, and what the relationship between those are is based on what you think and what you bring to the table. That's what I love about it, because it kind of reflects back to you who you are. And it helps you to kind of let your mind race a little bit as to why he put that there. Or what does that mean? Or why is there a rocket ship next to this bunny rabbit? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so random yet well thought out. I like that it's both of those at the same time. And we have been getting such humongous positive feedback from the staff.
Good.
That's one thing that I really want to emphasize is there was a lady that came over. I got to tell this story real quick. There's a lady that came up to us, me and a gentleman that works in the marketing department. We were walking through and I was just showing him the mural. We had met there for lunch to see it. And a lady walked through us and then walked out. And I guess she heard us talking about, you know, the mural more specifically, not just as like a patient, you know, who's seeing it, but with specifics about how the project went. And she came back, she doubled back and came to us and said, did you guys help to put the mural up? And I said, yeah. And she was like, I just want to let you know that the staff here, we have been, because they're doing COVID testing in our parking garage, and that's been going on for quite some time. And the mural is located in an entrance that is connected to that area. She said, I want you to know that the people who have been working down here, and this is no slight against ProMedica, so no one say that, no one say this to anyone who works at ProMedica, but she said, we felt forgotten down here. All this time that we have been working, and it just really felt like no one remembered that we were even down here. When this went up, we felt like this was you saying, we see you, you know? And it has meant so much to us. And then she almost started crying. I almost started crying, you know. It went past, oh, it's so pretty. You know, it went to this deeper place of, wow, this makes me feel like I'm appreciated at work. That's a big thing to have an impact from a mural to make someone feel like that. So I just want to say to both of you that this work extends way beyond beautification of Toledo Hospital. This was something that I really feel gave our staff a renewed sense of purpose in their work. And I think that that's so super powerful. And I think that you both should be proud of that.
I want to add to something that I saw in the design of the characters. It's, you know, because they're abstract, they're like these cartoon characters, but their interaction with each other is more, you know, highlighted and like more vibrant, the interaction with the characters. And they're all the interactions are speaking to some type of help or support or acknowledgement of someone being there. It's like it's right in all of the interactions with the characters. And then with the color background, it always, you know, it places you in this kind of mode, you know. So if you see, when you see the characters are always, you know, their interaction and the relationships between them start to like really vibe. And especially if someone's like walking through these spaces all the time, they're probably attaching themselves to a character or some spot that they see all the time. So I thought that was really a great thing when I saw them go up.
Absolutely.
Well, this is, you know, one of the amazing things about being in public art and about doing murals, and I'm sure Yusuf's seen this too in all his murals, is that it's, you know, when being an artist is a pretty solitary thing. You spend a lot of time, you know, alone making stuff, have no idea how it will communicate with other people. And, you know, and when you're out there on a wall in public painting a mural, it becomes painfully obvious. Like, you know, Melanie and I have been up on a wall and we get our very first ugly scratchings up on the wall, just blocking out the design, and people respond just, before there's any inkling of what the actual artwork is going to be. Just the fact that there's been kind of an effort or an investment made in that space, you get this gratitude that is completely foreign to you as an artist. That kind of appreciation, and it's kind of a mixed bag because it's so early on in the process. You're like, they have no idea what this is going to be, but thank you.
Right, you don't even know what it's going to look like yet.
Yeah, but just the act of making that investment in that space means a lot to people, and that's been kind of hammered home as to us, as far as like, what this is why they commission murals, is because communities really respond to the effort to brighten things up and to give it's so almost always just perceived as a gift. It's really amazing to be in on that process. You don't often feel that way as an artist if you're sticking artwork up on a wall in a gallery. Nobody feels like you're giving them a gift when it has a price tag next to it. So.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, because it's like you said, you hadn't even done anything yet.
Yeah,
and yet
right.
People are excited,
Right.
So isn't that a testament to not just you, the artist, or an artist being in the room, or your presence being there, but the anticipation of something new about to happen? People can feel that before they even see what the art is.
Mm-hmm.
So that just speaks to the power of art, I think, too, and the power of getting people invested personally with what you're doing, even before color goes up, or when you were sketching it, and we were doing the time-lapse video, it was just so exciting for us to see that too, and I knew what the design was going to look like. And that didn't make any difference. I loved watching you think it out. That was just as artistic as you painting it out, so I think that speaks a lot to the power that artists have, that isn't just putting the art up there, but it's just being around, just sharing some of yourself. I think that's really, really, that's why we need to get paid more, because I think that we contribute so much more than just the artwork itself. So next, let's talk about the experience in creating the mural. We kind of started down that path. What were the best parts about working on this, whether together, whether being in the space it was? Talk about that, and maybe even some of the challenges in this particular project.
Well, I abandoned Yusuf for so much of this. He was on his own a lot in that 9-story stairway. So you want to start with that one?
So so you guys don't realize, so Pete came up with this way of like organizing the paint, right? So it's like about 40 gallons of various colors, and they're all numbered, and they all had this map, and he had to manage people coming in who were kind of like, all right, where do I start? And it's an up and down process. So we had to be in the elevators, we had to find the floor, we had to and keep in mind, we're not using any kind of water. So we're not washing these brushes, right? So all of these brushes, had to be kind of managed and not turn into bricks. So the way this all was managed in this way was really well thought out. I know one thing about a mural is, facilitating people helping you, and that's very difficult. And the other thing is managing the materials and the supplies, right? So and once you're in that stairwell and you got the wrong color, that means you got to go back in the elevator or back to the hallway, get the right color, and don't find the wrong brush with the, because you got a orange that would be slightly darker than the orange. But keep it all like organized. It was that for me, that was one of the best experiences, is just kind of like seeing how that mechanism was going, because here it was the challenge of organizing all of these colors and placing them where they needed to go, and and taking out the idea of, I mean, there was a feeling of the color, the concepts, there was, it's very intuitive, but it was married with a design. It was married with, you know, the function of getting it on the wall, you know, and doing it in a really clean, precise way. And that for me was, it was a mixed, it was the mixture of the challenge, but how the challenge was met with like the organizing of it all. I think it was good. And I think what happened was, because it was like that, it gave room for us to connect as artists, as people, because I would come in there and we would jab the jibs for like, you know, at least an hour, you know, and then we'd be like, oh wait, we gotta work. We gotta do some work. Um, but we were able to connect during the pandemic, because it wasn't like, hey, yo, Pete, let's go get lunch somewhere. Let's go do this. You couldn't do that. So it was like that connection had to happen at the site, you know, in the hallway with masks. You know, I'm actually seeing Pete for the first time. I really didn't know I don't know who this person is. Melanie, his wife, I still don't, if I saw her in the alleyway, I wouldn't know who she was. I mean, we were all, you know, taking precaution. And I think that kind of led to the safety of it too. Like we all had like this like regimen, and things were organized in a really, really cool way. And I just spoke to like the creativity of it. But that stairwell was our spot, man. You go in that stairwell and you're just zoned out. You're just trying, you didn't care about anything else but making that line crispy, and making that, you know, you getting the full coat of color in those shapes. I felt like I was living inside of a lava lamp, you know, eventually. But
That's a good analogy.
yeah, that's my take on it. I don't know if I even answered the question, Valerie, but there you go.
That was the challenges. And I'd just like to let everyone know that this was a public stairwell that was not closed during the 2 months. So people were walking in there. You saw how tight those spaces were. There were ladders, there were, you know, so and then the staff that deal with like coding in a hospital, if you all know what I'm talking about when I say that, like code blue, somebody is about to die, you know what I'm saying? Like they're racing through this stairwell because the elevator would take too long. So they use this to move quickly, you know, so those were a lot of obstacles that you had to paint that crispy line around in order to make sure that everything turned out the way that it should. So this was no easy feat.
Yeah, you keep your ears open. You start hearing like some pitter patter, some feet. You start packing up and just moving to the edge of the wall. Just let them through. But they were really gracious, and they, you know, the folks there were really, really super helpful too. Some of them painted a little bit on the wall too, you know. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and the woman who said something about, you know, the woman I told the story about was the one that you painted the giraffe for, Pete.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
You just so happened to walk by when we were walking by, so that was
great.
So funny.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. We got. I think we had 2 requests through there that we were able to accommodate. So yeah, I'm glad she could recognize the giraffe. It was a little bit of a wonky
she
giraffe.
pointed to it. She said, "This is my giraffe right here.
Good.
This
I'm glad.
is the giraffe I asked for." So she was so proud.
Good. That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that you know, like Yusuf was saying, the logistics of this were pretty daunting. I never experienced a project like this where the coordination of going up and down 9 flights of stairs and having base camp in the basement and bringing materials as you need them and having the right thing with you. And again, which kind of speaks to, techniques of doing public art that you have no way of knowing as a studio artist. And it's yet another obstacle to breaking into the world of public art is these systems that you have to work out over time that can really be an obstacle to, to making a project like this viable. And, we had enough experience going in to have the, the nuts and bolts of the system beforehand, but it still requires a lot of adjusting on the fly. And yeah, and so I guess Valerie, that we had talked a little bit about, community and collaboration, and those kinds of lessons that you learn about the practical side of things are a huge reason to, to collaborate with other artists, because this is a lot of those techniques are just, they're certainly not available through art school that I experienced. They, you kind of have to just learn them from other artists. And yeah, that's another reason why the, collaboration has been a really important thing to me.
Absolutely. That's something I think that a lot of people don't think about, because you have to work within these parameters. You have your own system and your own way of doing things, and then you're plopped down into someone else's system.
Yep.
And they have a set of rules, and they have a set of places that you can be and not be, and they have a set of, expectations from you and other things, and then you have to interact with other people and staff, and and still maintain your organization. So that's not an easy thing to do, but like you said, that just comes with experience, because how can you prepare for that? You don't deal with that in your studio at home. So when other people are thrown in the mix, like you said, it's really good to have artists to work with. That's a great segue into our next couple of questions, which I want to focus on collaboration and the power of that, the importance of that. Pete, you're a part of a husband and wife team. Can you tell us a little bit about that collaboration, what that's like, and some of the things you all have been able to accomplish?
Yeah. So Melanie and I have been collaborating since we were in college in 1987. So we met freshman year in the dorms. So we've been working together since years before we ever dated. We're really lucky to have that. As I've been doing public art for the last 10 years or so, and coming to learn that it's almost, it's just not an individual pursuit. It's there's so many kind of, some creative and some non-creative, some administrative skills, all kinds of things. It's really, I kind of feel like it's something like small scale filmmaking, in that there's just a lot of different roles that have to be played. And to have a partnership or a group of collaborators is a huge advantage. Melanie worked as a graphic designer for 20 years before just recently leaving behind her last freelance client to go full-time into public art. So she does a lot of the work with putting together our proposals and presentations, as well as in formulating the artwork itself. I think, the amount of time that you spend in kind of managing projects compared to actually doing artwork and doing the creative side, it's a lot more time doing these other aspects. And to do that alone, I don't have all the skills that I need to do that. Fortunately, my public art experience, as I mentioned, it's been collaborative ever since I started. I was never under any illusions that I could do this all alone. And you're working with fabricators and learning how to build things. And some of we haven't talked about this much at all, but we do lately we've been doing a fair bit of cut metal work where we're taking designs and cutting it with water jet and then fabricating it into whether it's decorative railings or other architectural features. And I know absolutely nothing about metalwork. So when we work with fabricators, that's a whole collaboration in itself. And it's one of the things I love about being in this role, doing public art, is that you get to be the customer. So when I'm working with a fabricator, they're usually very happy to to give me an education about what they do and about how things should be made. And I gotta say, I've learned as much from those guys as I did in school, about how things are built. So yeah, so there's kind of no separating what I do from collaboration.
That's awesome that you started out in that way. That just kind of helps to
Yeah.
prepare you, because you can't do anything big by yourself. You just
No.
can't, And why would you want to? Everybody's,
right.
like you said, expertise, background. It just helps to make the project better. And I think that then you can go after larger opportunities. For those of you who, just to give a little bit of background of how Pete and I met, it was a whole different project that they were up for, through the Arts Commission. And in addition to the proposal design wise for that space, there was this entire history lesson about Toledo that Pete and Melanie gave the steering committee. And when I tell you, that made so much of an impact on me as a decision maker, that you took the time to do the research for that and have that as a presentation, just speaking to the other part of the art as a business. There's the thinking of the design and the concept, but then you have to present it in such a way where it's persuasive, that you actually get chosen. So people have to like you, and people have to think that you're competent and that you've done your homework and all these other things. And that takes a team, to be able to do that on a regular basis. So I applaud your team for being so thorough. That was the thing that just stood out to me, that you guys were so thorough about that. And I know that has a lot to do with Melanie in addition to yourself. So awesome. So Yusuf, you are no stranger to collaboration. You have, among other organizations, you have founded the Toledo Black Artists Coalition. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why was it started? What have you all been doing?
Yeah, so that came out of the history of that coalition. I would say that there's been groups of artists here in Toledo, specifically African American artists, who have came together and created collectives before. So this is like an extension of that. So I want to honor that, but at the same time, this was born out of this particular group was born out of protests, because museums across the country were coming out with these statements of neutrality after a lot of the upheaval happened due to the killing of George Floyd. So as artists, we thought that this was a very important time to really speak up and speak out about the political nature of art and the role that museums should take. So after that statement came out, one of my friends and artist, Paul Verdell, decided to quit his job as a security guard there. And I said, hey, why? And he kind of was explaining to me, and we read over this statement that the new director, Adam Levine, had made. And so he said, we should do something about this. So we should protest. So me and him got our little picket signs and called up some close friends, and we just stood out there on Monroe Street and did our thing, and it started what I believe now is a true pathway and dialogue to change the culture. We're still in that phase and we're still continuing to do that work there, not necessarily just museum centric, but overall in the city too, right? So we want to be an organization that is a conduit for artists of color to find opportunity, and also agencies and institutions, cultural institutions, to find artists for those opportunities as well. So we're in the stages of organizing further and becoming more solidified. Um, so, but I think that I was able to bring my knowledge to bear because of, Young Artists at Work, my first, you know, first time, working was as an artist, like in that way publicly, was in a collaborative way. We all learned how to appreciate each other's space, but also share space. And when I teach, a lot of times I teach collaboratively. My students hate it, by the way. They like, Miss Latif, we do not want to do another group project. And they just come at me, but I'm like, no, we're gonna do it, And I just want to show them, hey, you got your individual thing, but also it could be that much more expanded when you reach out, when you share that space. But not to take away from, the efforts, as the individual. Because I do have a individual practice, but it's in a way where I don't, I just do it, I do it in a way where I'm not so vested where it can't change or someone can't implement an idea or something like that. But when it comes to public art, you're already collaborative because the people in the audience that are looking at it are taking something new too, and implementing their own ideas on the thing that you're making. So, I mean, just being public in a public space like that, I just recently did a mural for the ProMedica headquarters there off of the water. And that was me as an individual, but I brought my UT students in to help. My daughter painted some stuff, which she's a little bit upset at me because I went over some of it. I went over all of it, actually. And then I had another group come in, prior to that, and they did a lot of spray painting on the wall. We made a big mess, I think we had the folks nervous over there for a minute. But it was great. And then the artist as auteur, you come in and you're just like, okay, this is how we're gonna clean this up or work with this and create this. So it's it's a really good process, I think, and just kind of speaks to how things naturally get made. We're so right now in the digital age, we're not very direct. We don't interact with each other the same way. We can always just swipe and just totally, now that person doesn't even exist anymore, So it's like, I think artists are a way to connect us back to our core human, traits and ways of being gregarious and being amongst each other. I think artists are at the core of that. So
Absolutely.
that's my spiel.
Doesn't it take bravery to be a public artist? Doesn't it take courage? Because you are basically bearing your soul out there to the world, and you're letting them watch you do it.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
And something that Pete spoke of is like the bureaucracy of it, like the paperwork, I mean, that stage of it is like very heady, and a lot of times like artists are like, hey, I need to do this work. But then the other end of it, it's like, okay, how do I get this work into a public space? And I think that kind of lends, I think going forward, the coalition, I think, may even be able to be a clearinghouse or a space where artists can learn and know that network as well. So um, yeah, it's a lot to wade through.
It's funny when you said that you worked at well, from the young artist who worked to what you did at the museum. I find it so funny because for those of you who don't know, the museum and the Arts Commission are right across the street from each other,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so,
Right.
and so to be raised over here and then to 20, 30 years later, pop up across the street and say,
Yeah.
you know, it just speaks to, I think, the destiny that all of us have. But this is this Moses situation, right? Where you were
I was
like
about to say that. I was about to say that. Here's Moses being critical of the man who raised him. Pharaoh's like, man, you got some nerve.
I made you.
Right. And I feel that way too, but he's like, hey, we gotta be critical, yeah.
But they taught you to stand on your own. They taught you as an artist to be able to stand up for yourself, right? To be able to join with others for something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And those things kick in when, going back to a public space, we're all experiencing this trauma as a country and all these other things. So
yeah,
it almost is inevitable that artists be at the forefront of this, telling stories and bringing awareness of issues that are important to the public to know about. I think that artists are the ultimate, like you said in our the interview that you did with Prometica, are ambassadors. Artists are these liaisons to this other way of thinking, this other viewpoint. So I'm so, not just in social justice issues, but like you did in the healthcare industry, there is an acknowledgement there that a lot of times doesn't come out in the same way. When you get a thank you healthcare workers message, but what you created gives a different viewpoint or different perspective on how to do that, and one that's obviously very touching. So I think that speaks so much to the power of collaboration, that you all are able to come together, meeting of the minds, and create something that shows what diversity, that shows what teamwork, that shows what positive change looks like. That's in a way that all of us can get and then hopefully emulate. So we're coming up on the last 10 minutes. So I did want to open it up for questions if anyone had any from the group. I have additional if no one did, but I want to make sure that our audience gets an opportunity to ask anything of you two, or about the project, about public art, anything at all. Do we have any questions from anyone? And you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Hold on, let's see. Okay, so question for Yusuf from the chat. Where did you graduate high school from?
Whitmer High School. Go Panthers.
Whitmer. Where'd you graduate from, Ashley? I don't even know. Any other questions? Where do you guys draw inspiration when starting a new project? Either one of you can answer.
Go ahead, Pete.
One of the things that one of the hardest things for me in being a studio artist before I was doing public art was that in between projects time. Like I could roll on a project, and I had projects that I worked on my own for a year, 2 years, several years, and I loved that. And then the in between part, trying to come up with the next idea, that's the part that made me want to slam my head through the wall. So one of the things that I really like about public art is that you're kind of given a context, and it kind of pushes you to, think about this place, think about Toledo, and it gives you a starting point. And when I was younger, I had a set of themes that I kind of, just were my go-to themes. As you get older, you're a different person. I don't kind of feel driven by, specific content as much. And it's one of the things that I love about this public art process that we've been in for the last several years is, you know, we get a chance to say, okay, this is going to be about history of Toledo. And you know, like Valerie, you were saying about that presentation. I mean, we were lucky and we were cursed to have 2 months to prepare for that presentation. You know, Melanie is our research wing, really, and she just went down the rabbit hole. You know, we came up with a whole set of things like you know, I think there was 4 themes. There was the history of Toledo as Glass City. There was the history of innovation. There was the history of being a site of social progress. And then there was the natural environment. And so we kind of ended up with those 4 themes and just kind of followed them all out as, you know, as far as they would take us for those 2 months until the buzzer ran out. You know, I love that about this process, is that it, you know, it pushes you. Like, you know, we would have never spent 2 months in virtual Toledo if not for that project. So it was really a lot of fun to do that.
And taught me something that I didn't know. Taught me some things I didn't know about Toledo, and I'm born and raised here. You know.
Yeah, well, you didn't have 2 months to prepare for that meeting.
I only had 38 years that I've been living here, but no diss to TPS, but Candace ain't on the call. But anyway, so yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it, because sometimes it takes fresh eyes to come into a new city and be able to say, this is what we see, or this is what we experience. This is how we see you all. And to be able to bring that into the presentation, I think was so super awesome. So I love that about your process, that you start with research. Yusuf, how about you? Where do you draw your inspiration from for new projects?
I feel very comfortable out of context. I don't know, like I can just, when it comes to like trying to like be within a particular space or theme, I don't know, I always work in post in a way. So if I'm working in a theme, I'm usually drawing from something that I've already created. So I'll, you know, look at work that I have that fits the mode of that theme. But that work that I created was completely just making. I wasn't even thinking about anything particularly. And then the context comes, and then now I know why I made that, and I can relate it to that thing. So I work in post, I guess. That's kind of like my process. So when I'm making something, I'm not necessarily inspired by anything, you know, I'm just doing it. And then, you know, and then it's the after effect, you know, after the fact that you know, helps me realize, you know, even why I even made that. So it helps me to kind of be an audience member too, you know, like I don't necessarily want all the answers in the onset of making it, but like after the fact, you know, being able to learn from it as much as the audience, you know. So
Wow, I never thought about it like that. That's kind of prophetic. You know, you're making the next project without knowing what the next project is.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, and I would say that too. I mean, even Yusuf pretty much just said the opposite of what I said, I think. But I agree completely with what you're saying, because you know, after all that research that we do, it also is a question of us going back through like old sketchbooks and finding things that, like, oh, now that you have this theme, now that you're thinking about, you know, glass manufacturing and inventions in Toledo, like where you know, I may have drawings that fit into that. So we absolutely integrate that kind of process that Yusuf's describing into what we do. And I agree completely. It kind of, I find it, the hardest drawings to make for this project were the ones that we tried to make deliberately after the research. The ones that I think were probably the some of the more successful little bits of drawing were things that we found from previous, doodlings, because they were done spontaneously. So that's absolutely a part of what we do too.
Yeah, it's like a back and forth kind of thing that happens, You're kind of using both of those time frames in a way, and then trying to filter out and figuring out what's best.
Yep.
Yeah, I would think that the worst thing that you can do is tell an artist to just do whatever you want, right?
Yeah, right.
Just whatever you feel like, just do it, and it's so much easier, especially for me as an artist. Give me some parameters, give me where am I supposed to fit, or what is this supposed to be about, or who is give me something to surround my idea around, to rein it in, because I'll go crazy with endless possibilities, but necessity breeds creativity to me. So it's like, okay, if I know I can only use blue, if I know I can only make it a foot long, if I know I can only XYZ, now I'm creatively trying to think of how I can accomplish what you asked me for based on how I have to fit it into the rules, quote unquote. So our last question, and then we will wrap up. How would a nonprofit business connect with talented artists like yourselves that would be willing to do pro bono work or work at a discounted rate? So do you do pro bono work, I guess is the first question. And then how does that come about? How do you decide which projects to take on?
I guess the first thing I would say is artists are asked to do a lot of pro bono work. So it's hard to be super completely encouraging of that approach. I think there has to be an investment kind of on both sides, and there's ways to make that work. There are projects that I do that I will help out with trying to find an appropriate grant to apply for the project, and help with writing the grant proposal and that kind of thing. But artists are living, more often than not, it's hand to mouth, it's kind of it's a very common thing to ask the artist to donate to the auction or to put in their time, and it's kind of like, I kind of feel like if you wouldn't ask the plumber to do that for free, you shouldn't be going to the artist for that for free. There has to be some kind of investment on both sides.
Yeah, we had a lot of there was a lot of time in the beginning when I was a young lad. We had to educate folks because we were getting asked to donate work for organizations for their fundraisers. Heck, the Arts Commission being one of them. We had to educate them to say, hey, no, we can't do that. So you'll notice like the mix show and things like that, the work that the artists can choose to donate a certain percentage. There's things like that. And also, my wife used to coordinate murals, and she would come up against my wife Rachel Richardson used to she would donate, or she would coordinate murals, and the one thing that people would ask or just not have or realize is that there needed to be a budget to pay for the artist's time, and that's in the designing of it and figuring out, because if I say this, if it's free, the artist is probably more or less connected in some way, or feels connected or invested in that nonprofit. And if the one thing that you could at least say to the artist is, that's when you say, do whatever you want. And don't be mad when
Right.
hey, okay, oh, you want it for free? All right, here, it's like giving an artist a canvas. All right, well, here you go. I'm about to do whatever I want. So you might get, some nine-eyed frog on the side of your building, but hey, you didn't invest in it, so you can't say, as part of the idea, whatnot, So that's,
I
there
agree with
must
that
be some type of
100%.
give and take, not just nine.
Absolutely. And I think also too that we have to consider, and you touched on this a little bit, Yusuf, the better question I think would be, how do nonprofit businesses connect with funding so that they can hire talented artists?
Right.
Instead of asking the artist to do it for free, find out how you can raise the money to pay them what they charge. I am very passionate about this, Yusuf. We done had a million conversations about this.
Yeah.
And I think that as a professional, I think that we have a duty to give back. I think that we have a duty to reinvest in our communities. Absolutely, 100%. I also think too that we're not always given the opportunity to do it how we would want to do it, like other people are given that same opportunity. For us, it's always do this the way that I'm asking you to do it, as opposed to how would you like to donate or contribute? It might not be artwork. Maybe I might want to give you some money. Maybe I might want to just show up at your event. Maybe I might want to just tell other people, or maybe I can connect you to someone else who needs a portfolio build up. So they might want to do it for free. But I think that, like you said, that's up to us really to push back and educate on that, because there are so many ways to be able to get funding for art projects. And I think that a lot of times those ways aren't known or aren't taken advantage of. And so the knee-jerk reaction is to ask for a discount. So we gotta be more mindful of who can donate. And you'll get a lot of private citizens who are willing to donate. It doesn't always have to be a grant. It doesn't always have to be a large corporate donation. Sometimes private citizens, especially if it's the theme is something that is important to them, would be willing to give money as well. So we got to push for that on the finance side to make sure that money is being invested in public artworks, because we're all going to benefit from it. We're all going to reap the benefits. Yeah. So the community should also make an investment. I think that proves that we care about our artists and our local art community.
So one.
All right, so go ahead, Pete.
Sorry, if I just to throw in a couple other side notes on that. There are like larger hardware stores like Lowe's or Home Depot often will have community grants that they're looking to give supplies for those kinds of things. So those are, if you have a project, if you kind of line up, get your ducks in a row for the project, know exactly what you're trying to accomplish, write it up, have some promotional text for it that you can present for these kinds of, to ask for those kinds of gifts. It's not always a long grant application process for those local things. Like the local Lowe's may be able to, their manager may be able to rip off a check for $1,000 worth of paint or whatever, as long as you have your project in line. If you can line up your artist and approach it as a partnership, so that, hey, we're working with this local artist, this is what they do. If you kind of approach it that way and seek to get the funding elsewhere, you'll find that the artist, if the artist is in on that partnership from the beginning, they can be a real helpful selling point to businesses in the community. Like you have this artist and this body of work that you're trying to fund and do this for the side of my business that will do this for the community. You may very well find that just having that partnership and showing that you're working with this artist, you can go to businesses, you can also go to individuals. And you may find that it's a lot easier to ask for a donation for a specific project like that, especially in a high profile public arts project, to people that otherwise would have been difficult to approach. I think thinking of the artist as contributing their expertise, the money is not, and the time is not necessarily something they can afford to give, but they can help you kind of find that funding elsewhere if you work with an artist as from the beginning, and that's a selling point when you're looking for funding elsewhere. And I'm guessing, I shouldn't be talking for Yusuf, but your organization of local artists might be a place to go to, as a start, if your business is looking for an artist partner that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with that, Pete, because I believe that, once you get one donor, you can leverage that. Now we have so-and-so who's agreed, would you also be willing to join in? And then that starts the ball rolling as far as getting more interest from other businesses and organizations. And if an artist probably, and correct me if I'm wrong for speaking for either one of you, but if an artist is willing to donate anything, it would be the necessary tools to get funding. So maybe I will show you a mock-up or something like that,
right,
just to be able to get something in front of donors to persuade them that I will donate. You know what I'm saying? But the entire process, I think, involving the artist from the beginning, that not only shows respect for the artist, but would probably generate a lot of other ideas that maybe you didn't think about as it relates to funding and getting that started. Thank you so much for that. I think that was needed.
That was a good question.
Okay, so I know it was a great question, and I think so much of the time that can start or stop a public art project real quick, right? The funding, the resources to be able to put it on, and we want to be more cognizant about how we're treating and approaching our artists more as partners rather than employees, or those who are just, gaining portfolio work. I've heard that so many times. Oh, you can add this to our portfolio. I'm like, I have a full portfolio by now. Thank you. Like, I want some money. So I think that if we can just all come to the table with ideas about how to accomplish that, we'll get it every time. So thank you so much. This has been an awesome discussion. Thank you guys so much for being with us. I think that this is going to jumpstart a lot of additional interest in public artworks. So hopefully everyone's going to go home with their thinking caps on about what the next great public art project can be. Thank you so much, guys, again, for joining us. There are 2 lucky participants in today's session that were randomly selected for a $5 gift card to the Nutrition Spot, which is a proud sponsor of our Advantage member discount card. Congratulations to Joanne Gambolas. I apologize if I'm butchering your name. And to Melanie Allen. Thank you, ladies. We will, Sue Burning will be reaching out after today's call to get the gift cards in your hand. So if you see an email from Sue Burning, that is, she is with the AAF Toledo. So she's not spam. Please answer her email so that you can get that gift cards in your hands. Thank you to Cascade Environmental for sponsoring this sweet treat. And then lastly, I'd like to invite you to our next event. It's called Compliance versus Commitment: How to Go Beyond Accessibility with Advertising and Disability. It will be Wednesday, April 21st at 11:30 a.m. Agencies and advertisers are taking greater strides to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion, but how does disability fit in? Learn why checking the box for website accessibility is not enough, and how you can move from compliance to disability commitments. This is going to be moderated by Mallory Crooks, Public Relations Manager of the Ability Center, and special guest Josh Laubner, Director of Strategy for Design Sensory. And I believe that concludes our webinar for today, Creative Direction. Thank you again for joining us. It's been invaluable, guys. It's been an honor not only talking to you today, but working with you on the Toledo Hospital mural project. I know it's not going to be the last time that we work together. So I won't say goodbye. I'll say till next time. And thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.